good morning, and welcome. If you're watching this live right now or in playback, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for tuning in. This show is called Enthusiastically Self-Employed, and I bring on amazing people to talk about a variety of topics. And before I say hi to Lynn and introduce her, I want to just invite anybody who's watching live right now. Could you please leave a comment? Just say hi, hello, let me know that the live stream is picking up. This is one of the tricky parts about going live is we don't know if the technology is working until we see people starting to come into the comments. So if you're seeing it, we'd love it if you could just say hi real quick in comments. While we're waiting for those to come in, I'm delighted to have with me here today fellow author, my friend, my mentor. I was a former client of hers. She's a former client of mine. We've worked in and out of each other's lives, and I'm delighted to have you here today, Lynne Golodner. How are you doing, Lynn?
Hey, Brenda, I'm so excited to be here and flattered that you would call me a mentor, but I am so excited to talk with you, and anything I can absorb from Brenda Meller makes me really happy. So it's great to be here.
Well, it's going to be a great chat today. And we've actually done, I think this might be our second or third. I know we've done at least one of these so far, but I feel like we've done a couple of the shows coming in here. So I'm delighted to have you back. And I see we've got the live streams working. Lee Moss is in our LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Lee. That helps us to know that the live stream is picking up here. So Lynn, you and I was talking in the pre-show, and I think we've known each other for it's been over 10 years now. It might even be more than that. I don't know if it's been 15, but I feel like we've known each other and we've worked with each other in different capacities, as I said, over the years. Now, I know a little bit about you, but why don't you take a few minutes and tell those that are watching in the audience a little bit about what you do and who you help?
Yeah, for sure. So, I started as a journalist. That was my first career, I guess I would say, for 15 years in New York, Washington, D.C., and then I came back home to Michigan. And then I created a marketing and PR company in 2007 called Your People. So I've done that for a pretty long time now. And it's all based on storytelling and relationships. But I've always been a
Mhm.
writer. So in all those years, I wrote books on the side and they were published in a variety of different ways. And my last book came out in 2013. And
Mhm.
I kept thinking to myself, well, I'm really a writer, but I'm spending all my days doing marketing. And so around the time that I turned 50, I started to wonder, am I really a writer or is it just sort of something I'm saying? And so I really shifted my life and turned it all around. And while I still do a lot of marketing and PR, I work mostly with authors now, helping them with their
Mhm.
author brand and building their marketing strategy. And I put my writing front and center. So I had a novel come out in September. I have another
Mhm.
novel coming out next year. And my goal is to write a book a year for the rest of my life. And I also started a publishing company, Scotia Road Books, which is a hybrid press for women over 40 with strong voices. And that was because I saw a need in the publishing industry and decided to fill it. So I wear a lot of hats. I also teach a lot of writing classes and coach writers. So it all sort of aligns in the writing sphere these days.
That's awesome. And it's just such a varied past. And I love how each of your experiences, you've pulled upon them and you've expanded upon them and you continue to grow and evolve. And I think both of us have, I'm going to try to point to it over here. Is this your latest book right here, Woman of
Yes.
Valor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a 10-year gap between that last nonfiction book and then my first novel, which came out in September 2023. And it's a novel that I love, and I think you loved it. And,
I
I'm getting,
did.
yeah, I'm getting great feedback. But I think it took me a long time to really get in the groove of writing fiction. And so now that is my main focus, although I still write some creative nonfiction essays that are published in magazines and journals and things like that too.
You can write anything. You can write short, you can write long. You love writing, and then you teach people how to write and you help people through the writing process. So when I asked you to come on the show today, I said, what do you want to talk about? And you said, and here's the topic right above us, finding the best publishing path for your book. Now, before we jump into that, Lynn, I have heard of this issue happening with some other streams as well, but through StreamYard and LinkedIn, for some reason, they're not talking properly. The stream is picking up. But I just went on to LinkedIn and I see, in addition to Lee's comments this morning, I also see a few other people. And I just want to say shout out and thank you so much for leaving your comments on LinkedIn. Aaron Fortuna, Faisal Alvi, Jeff Longley, David Bourne. So I want to thank all of you for watching. For whatever reason, the baton that is happening over on LinkedIn isn't being given back to StreamYard. So I'm seeing your comments here, but they're not coming up inside StreamYard for you to share, but I will keep an eye on them, and we'll have a chance for some audience Q&A later. So I've always been trained, Lynn, to if there's little glitches and things like that that are happening, to let the audience know. Because I'm sure like Jeff and Faisal and Aaron and David are like, why didn't she pull my comment up on screen? Like,
Right.
that up, why didn't we? So at any rate, we're going to talk about finding the best publishing path for your book. And Lynn, I know you have so much great advice for us. So let's talk about that. How do we figure out where and how and what we do with publishing?
Yeah, so I actually feel like this is a question that I can answer really well because I've had books published in a variety of ways. So my graduate degree is an MFA in writing. My master's thesis was a collection of poems. It was a manuscript, and it was accepted for publication by a small publisher before graduation. So I arrived to graduation at grad school with a box of books, which was really cool. This was back in the 90s when really the only way to publish was to have somebody else choose your book and publish it for you. And so you were really beholden to the industry and the subjectivity of publishers. And if people didn't like your writing or it wasn't timely or it wasn't what they were looking for, it didn't mean it wasn't good. It just was not for them. And so
Right.
your publishing career was really in the hands of other people. Fast forward to where we are now, and it's really evolved. And I'm so grateful that it has. And it's funny because the way I was trained in college and afterwards, it was that, it's only legit if somebody else publishes you. And that is no longer true. And
Yeah.
so we have three different paths now. We have traditional publishing, which is what I just mentioned, where you query agents or publishers and they accept your book and then they do everything. You don't pay any money. But also they call the shots. And so you might not make
Mhm.
any money. They might change your title. They might ask you to do a significant revision, all kinds of things. Then there's self publishing, which is, you do
Mhm.
everything and you put it out there. But then there's a middle ground, which is called hybrid publishing, which is what Scotia Road Books is. And hybrid publishing is where you have skin in the game. You actually pay some money to the publisher. They do it all for you, but you retain creative control, but they have a vetting process. So they make sure that
Mm.
it's well written, it's edited, it's professionally designed and all those things. And the benefit of hybrid publishing is that they have the channels for distribution, which can be overwhelming to some self-publishers. So we have these three paths now. And I'm going to say that not one is better than another. It really just depends on what your goals are for your book and your career. And then you determine which path is appropriate at the time. So you might write many books and they might go through all different paths depending on where you are at the time. It's interesting, when I was thinking about publishing Woman of Valor, originally I thought, okay, well, I'm going to query agents and, get a publisher and wait for them to pick me and all the nail biting that ensues and everything. And I talked with a really good friend of mine. Her name is Elizabeth Gowing, and you can connect with her on LinkedIn as well. She's amazing. She's British and she lives in Kosovo, and she's had 6 books published, 2 from UK publishers, and 4 that she put out from her own press that she does with her partner. It's called Elbow Publishing. And I had a really frank conversation with her, and I just said, well, how do I make this decision? And she said, well, do you want to make a lot of money or do you want to sell a lot of books? And I said, kind of both, right? And she said, I don't think you can. And of course, I'm still challenging her on that, but
Yeah.
I asked her to explain it to me. And she explained that when she had the UK publishers, wow, did her book get out there? Tons of distribution channels in all the stores, but she makes £1 for every 10 pounds that are sold. So, if a book is 10 pounds, she makes 1/10 of that.
Yeah.
But when she publishes her own books, she may not have them go as far because she doesn't have as much distribution, although I'm going to argue that too because you can do so much these days. But
Mhm.
she makes all the money. She gets all the money. And so it was a really interesting conversation. And what it did was it opened my eyes to the fact that publishing is a business. And
Mhm.
so you have to decide how to publish based on what you want for your career as an author, as an entrepreneur, whatever it is. Not necessarily to make money for other people, but to suit your own goals. And that's how you make this decision of how to publish your book.
And I would imagine, Lynn, have you done all 3 paths? Is that why you know what they are, and I mean, pros and cons, or tell us about that?
I guess you could say I have, although I have not worked with a hybrid publisher other than my own press. So
Sure.
maybe that's
So it's
self-publishing still. I don't know.
in there.
Yeah. So technically, yes, but yeah, I did it all. but yes, I've had of my 9 books, I would say 7 have been traditionally published by small presses and 2
Mhm.
have been self-published. So one was completely self-published, no, like really very little distribution. This one, Woman of Valor, was through Scotia Road Books and
Mhm.
wide distribution around the world, very professionally done. And I was sort of using myself as a guinea pig for future authors that will publish through Scotia Road Books. So I figure I
Mhm.
can make all the mistakes on me and not on somebody else. And I
Mhm.
loved the process. It was so much fun. And yeah, I find it really exciting. So, I'm excited to shepherd other authors through it, but also teach writers how to do it themselves. It's not that hard.
And talk a little bit more about that because I think, like, for me, I've only published one book. I've got 4 other ideas that are floating around, and I mean, honestly, publishing a book is like having a child. It's like a good 9 months, and there's a lot of pain and, and angst and stuff that comes along, but,
Yes.
a lot of people, it just sounds so overwhelming, like the process of writing a book. And it's not just the writing. I mean, that can certainly be intimidating for some, but it's also the process of little things like getting that ISBN number and how do you design the cover and who proofreads it. And there's so many little decisions that come in that can feel very overwhelming. So, I mean, we're talking about how to publish. You're both in different paths to publishing, but I imagine like that comes up as part of your conversation with folks. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps in the process, and I think you have to take it one step at a time. So it is wise to hire a coach who can sort of lay out the whole process for you so you know what you're looking at. And probably that reminds me that I should create some kind of a tool so that people just know, like, here are all the steps in the process. So thank you for that. I will do that. Um,
Mhm.
but there's the writing and there's the publishing. So
Yeah.
first the writing, when you write the book, you have to know that the first draft's going to be pretty messy. It's going to need a really significant revision. You want other eyes on it. And so whether you're in a critique group or you have people who can read it or you hire, if it's your first book, I strongly suggest that you hire a developmental editor who can look at it and really give you big picture and chapter by chapter feedback. It's a good investment. It's not cheap, but I think you want somebody who's really going to guide you and make sure it's the best it can be. Um,
Mhm.
I think I
Did I get
did.
that right? Developmental editor? I just put that on
Oh,
screen. I'm
got
sorry
it.
to interrupt you. Is that right? Because I think that to me is like, oh, wait a minute, what was that? Because I can have my friend who enjoys copywriting to do editing, but is that different than a
Oh, yeah.
developmental editor? So
So
how what is that?
the developmental editor will take a look at the story arc and make sure there are no holes in the plot, that there's no disconnection between chapters, that there's a flow, that if you're writing fiction, the characters are well developed, there are no questions left. If it's
Okay.
nonfiction, is there a thread that connects the whole story? And if not, what could you do to repair that? So it's really
Mhm.
looking at the art of the story and making sure it's cohesive, it's compelling, there's no missing parts, there are no
Mhm.
holes. And so it's a really good investment. I hired a developmental editor for Woman of Valor, even though I've
Mhm.
had 8 books previously out. It was my first novel, and it was so worthwhile. And then I even went back to her and paid her again when I revised the first 100 pages, which were the most problematic part, and
Yeah.
got her feedback on that. And then once I felt that the manuscript was ready, I gave it to my last 2 readers who would read the whole thing and give feedback to see if it was ready to go in the world. And then I hired a proofreader. So there are copy editors and there are proofreaders. I didn't do a copy
Mhm.
editor because I'm pretty good at copy editing, but proofreading is just looking for any little mistakes, inconsistencies, and sometimes you need to do both. So it's really important to just understand what each one does. And then after that, there's the layout. So you want to make sure that you can, do typesetting, and we can talk about that in a minute. There's cover design. There's the whole packaging of it, which includes the ISBN number, the Library of Congress, the copyright submission, all
Mhm.
of those things, which again are not hard, but you need to do them. And so, I did all of that. And then you want to plan your launch. And so I created a marketing strategy for 6 months leading up to the launch. And that is something that we help at Scotia Road Books. We do offer as additional packages, like helping build the marketing strategy or coach writers in their marketing so they know what to do, so that once you put it out there, people know about it and they want to get it.
Yeah.
So let me say a word about typesetting. So, I interviewed a bunch of people thinking that I had to hire a graphic designer to lay out the book for me. And I found, and you can do that, you can definitely do that. But I found some software that was so much fun to work with. So I used Atticus, and
Mhm.
I think it's like, I don't know, $150, and you have a lifetime subscription. And so anytime it updates the software, you get the update. And I did my typesetting myself, and it was great, and it was easy, and it was great. I just love doing it. I even created a
Yeah.
book discussion guide to go with the novel in Atticus so that they match. And, just it was really, really fun. For the cover, I did hire graphic designers. It's a couple in England actually who teach graphic design at a university, but also do it for clients. They happen to be the graphic designers who worked with my friend Elizabeth that I mentioned earlier. And I did
Hmm.
interview quite a few graphic designers, but I chose them because I loved their approach. It was like so much fun to work with them. And
Yeah.
we went through and they had, sort of, what are they called? Like, sort of style sheets that, do you like this or do you like that? Or here are the thoughts with it. And we ended up coming up with a cover that I love, which I think we're going to keep that style for the next novel too, and just sort of have a theme running through some cohesiveness in my books. But
Okay.
it was a really artistic project and I loved doing it. And they did the reason I think it's really important to hire a graphic designer for your book is because it's not just the front cover, it's also the spine. And there are some dimensions that you want to make sure are perfect so that when you upload it to Amazon and Ingram,
Mhm.
it meets all the requirements. And I just knew that, they would handle it. And once I knew the size of the book, they could figure out the dimensions. Everything went off without a hitch. It was really great.
Yeah, it sounds like working with people who know the process probably streamlines the process from a timing perspective, but I think probably also reduces some of the costs.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, Lynn, there's folks that are watching this today or even watching the playback or listening to the podcast later, and they're like, well, I'll just save some money and I'll do the graphics design myself. I know Canva, I can do this inside Canva or other tools and stuff like that. What would you say to them? Is it can you try to go it alone? Or is it better if it's the first time through to work with outside experts?
I think you can. I mean, there are great tools, and Canva has templates that make it super easy. But I think for me, I wanted my book to look like any quality book that is put out by the big publishing houses in New York. And so I
Mhm.
took it very seriously, and this is my business as an author, and I want to be
Yeah.
represented by a very professional product. And
Mhm.
so I think if you look at the book and you read it, Brenda, the typesetting looks great, and you would never know that I did it myself on
Mhm.
software. But the cover also, especially when you hold it, it's really special. And so I feel like that was a great investment. But the typesetting, I think I got away with it really well, and it was easy. So um,
I
some
have to
things,
grab my book
yeah,
as you're talking about it because I
yeah,
want and even as I was reading the book, I have to tell you, Lynn, I was coming back to the cover images and I was trying to figure out, are these some of the pictures and imagery and
yeah,
the foods and the textures and, the
yeah,
scenes, I mean, like, these were like little glimpses into the story. Is
yes,
that is that
that's
correct?
yeah,
I mean,
yes,
you never really came out and said that, but
yeah,
sometimes I like, is the reader that you don't tell us everything, that we can kind of draw the own conclusion, then you feel like it's a little discovery that you've made by
yes.
yourself, but it really is a high quality book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that there are elements of this process you can do by yourself. And I
Mhm.
mean, really, you can do the whole thing yourself. I think
Yeah.
it's wise to invest in certain experts. So for me, it's graphic design and it's proofreading as well. This time around, I'm not hiring a developmental editor. I feel like I learned those structural things from her the first time. And I do
Mm.
have readers who are reading the book. That
Yeah.
is essential. So whether or not you pay them, you've got to have multiple sets of eyes, and it can't be your best friend or your sister or whomever. It
No.
has to be
It looks like such a great book. Good job. That's all
right.
they're gonna tell you.
I will say my best friend is an amazing writer and a very critical reader. And so she's one of my last readers before I put a book in the world because she will come back at me and say, well, what about this? And what about that relationship? And I felt like this was a little thin and like she'll really give me details. So if you have somebody like that who shares your interest and your expertise, great. But,
Yeah.
my sister's my biggest fan, but she's not going to give me critical feedback. My
No.
mom wants
Mhm.
to be an early reader for me. And I'm like, well, you can, but are you going to give me critical feedback? And my mom's a big reader. And she's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can. And I'm like, well, we can try, you know?
Should be supportive, and I think that's the difference. I mean, you're looking for feedback to be, say critical feedback to make it better. And then I
Yes.
think, yeah, you also need your supporters and your cheerleaders and the people on the sideline that to help to launch and market and whatnot. But there's the pre-launch team too that needs to be not afraid to give you direct feedback to help it to be
Yes.
better. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely. It's funny. My brother wrote a review on Amazon before he ever read the book, and I'm super grateful. I don't even know if he's read the book, so that was like super nice. But I'm not going to go to him for critical feedback. It's not his expertise. So you want the support from people who are going to cheer you on. You also want a trusted crew who's going to
Hmm.
give you the feedback that you need, even if you don't want it. And
Yeah.
so that this book can be a quality product that you put in the world that people are going to respect and rely on. And you want
Yeah.
also, I mean, listen, I'm building an author career, and a lot of the people that I coach, I talk to them about their author brand and what is your goal for your author career. So if you want to
Hmm.
write one book, it's a different thing than if you want to build a career as an author. And
Hmm.
one of the keys to building a career as an author is delivering a quality product that people are going to want to see the next and the next and the next. And so that's a super important question that you have to ask yourself. Am I in this for a bigger picture goal, or just because I wanted to write one book, which is, there's nothing wrong with
Right.
that, but that's
Yeah.
a very different endeavor.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and for those of us who haven't published, and you've did you say 9 books right now? Am I
Nine
do I remember
books.
correctly?
Yes. Yep.
So those of us, I mean, one book seems like a mountain, like how am I ever going to publish one book, but you've done this 9 times. And some of the things you're talking about, hiring an editor and hiring a developmental editor and a graphic designer and working with a coach and publishing and printing. Is it expensive? I mean, can you expect that your first book that you go out with, are you gonna be losing money on it? Is it a break even? Can you expect it to be profitable? Like, what is your experience on that?
So that's a really good question. I purposely have not done a spreadsheet of what I spent to create the book because I kind of don't
Mhm.
want to know, you know what I mean? Like it's really not very
Yeah.
wise, but I think I to me that's an investment in my career. So whether
Mhm.
or not
Yeah.
this book makes it back over its life, which it might, I do believe that those investments were worthwhile for the long haul. And I think with the first book, you want as much help as you can get. And I think, as you keep going, some things will become easier. Some you're going to want to invest each time. But
Mhm.
in terms of making money on books, it's a really big question. So there's a few
Yeah.
things. One, your marketing strategy is going to be super important, and it's not
Mhm.
just like one and done. It's an ongoing thing. You really want to breathe life into this book. So, for example, I launched this book in September. I had my first speaking engagement last week. And
Mhm.
I had a bunch of sales when the launch happened and whatever. Been doing a lot of social media promotions and newsletter and things like that. Um, I invested in a podcast publicist so that I will be on a lot of podcasts, but I paid for a full year because I want this to be over the lifetime of my writing career, not just when the book launched. But I have a ton of book tours planned in 2024 for this book. So even though I have
Okay.
another book coming out that year, like it's just getting started. And I think you have to remember that you put a book in the world and then the marketing begins and then the business begins because then it's available. And so, I plan to keep promoting this book and publish another book and publish another book. And
Right.
one of the keys to making money as an author is to write multiple books in your
Mhm.
genre so that once somebody reads one of them, they want to go back and check your backlist and buy other books of
Right.
yours. That's really important.
Yeah, related topics are slightly different or, different in the case of fiction, different storylines and things like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
I have to say, and I told you this in the pre-show, and I want to share this with our audience too. I used to love reading. And growing up, I was going to the bookstore and I found a used bookstore and I would buy books and just read them and just stay up till all hours of the night. And at some point, I started shifting from fiction to nonfiction, which is more educational, and you're getting a lot of insights and things like that. And I share this because there might be people listening or watching right now that can relate to this, but it feels like work because
Yes.
you're reading to educate yourself as opposed to when I bought this book. I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking it was a nonfiction because I've read your nonfiction book
Yeah.
before. And I started reading this and I'm like, oh, this is a fiction book. This is like actually just for enjoyment, but it was actually educating me. You talk about the Jewish faith and the family inside the book, and I learned a lot reading it too. But I found myself, instead of my usual read one chapter a night before I go to bed to start to whittle through the books on my nightstand, I found myself reading 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. I was like, I got to go to bed. And I haven't had that feeling since probably college, of like my bachelor's degree years and years and years ago before family and everything else. So I really enjoyed it, but I could see someone finishing this book and going, wow, I love this author. What other books does she have in her series? So I love that marketing strategy of like not just putting one book out there, but that's like the first in the series, or you're continually marketing yourself.
Yeah.
So I love that idea. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that the book was riveting for you, and I'm so excited to hear that. And I hope people watching will get a copy and hope they feel the same way. I've had a few people suggest writing like I guess another book in a series, like make it a series. They wanted
Yeah.
to know what happens next with Sally and Barry. And actually, it's funny, when I started writing this book, I thought it would be one of a 3-part series, but it
Mhm.
wasn't really the same characters. It was going to be like a spin-off with some of the secondary characters.
Oh,
But my
that's
next
interesting.
novel, what'd you say?
I like that. Like another character in the book, and you go down their storyline, and
Yeah,
it's kind of like when you watch a sitcom and they do like a spin-off, and you're like, oh, what's going on over here?
right. So I still might, because that
Mhm.
was sort of the initial little glimmer. But my next novel is nothing to do with these characters, but it has, obviously it's my style. It's a similar genre. Part of my author brand is to write compelling Jewish characters who fill their
Mhm.
lives with passion, purpose, and love. And
Yeah.
so it's not. I mean, this book happens to be about a religious community. Although tons of people who are not Jewish have read it and are interested, so that's cool.
Mhm.
I'm really glad to hear that. My next book, it's not a religious community at all. It takes place in Scotland and in Michigan, and there are Jewish identity questions in it, but there's like some magical realism and there's romance and whatever. So, I think that when people read that, they'll also be happy with the style. Like if they liked Woman of Valor, they're going to like that one too. So the idea really is, and I have friends who write 3 books a year. And
Wow.
that seems crazy to me. Like to me, a book a year is a very manageable goal, which
Like if you have more than one a year, just too much, right?
right, right. I mean, but actually, the people who do it, they
Yeah.
see the results, monetarily.
Yeah.
It pays off for them. So that's great. I just think it's a little more ambitious than I am at this moment. But um, I think it is important to understand and be honest with yourself. Do you want an author career, or do you just want to write the book you've always wanted to write, which is a great goal too? And then that
Yeah.
will determine a lot of your choices too.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I love, like, it's almost like a volume play too, because once you have the process down pat, and I think it's probably very intimidating the first time going through. So maybe to your point, like working with someone and who can guide you through the process the first time through. Then once you know the process, you can do it on your own. Although I
Yeah.
have to admit, I've done one book. I did work with a self-publishing coach through the process. I feel like there's some things I might do differently, and I probably would seek out someone to help me through the second part of the process. But
Yeah.
at any rate, I want to change gears and I want to bring our audience into the conversation with us here today. And I'm going to be pulling up LinkedIn in the background. So if you see me looking over here, it's because of the comment issue that was happening with StreamYard. And I'm
Yep.
hoping this gets resolved soon. But in the meantime, I'm just going to read the comments that I'm seeing, or the questions that are coming in from folks in here. And I'll just invite you, if you're watching, whether you're watching this live or watching this in playback, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching, don't be shy. Just say hi and let us know that you're watching, and let us know your feedback on this if you're finding this interesting and helpful. Martin Buckland is he's an executive resume writer and a search coach, and he says always accept feedback. It's free. And I'm not sure, Martin, if you've written a book, but did you want to add anything on to that comment, Lynn?
Yes, I think that's really smart. However, I'm going to add a little bit of a caveat to it. Um,
Hmm.
Not all feedback is equal. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, what I teach writers in my classes is that you get feedback from other writers and you get to decide what resonates with you and what doesn't. So if,
Mm.
everybody who's reading it is having the same confusion or questions, then maybe you should pay attention to that. But if one
Yeah.
person was like, for example, I really don't like adverbs. And I have an argument with a writer friend of mine who's an amazing writer. She does like adverbs. So, and we're in a critique group together. And whenever she brings a
Yeah,
chapter,
I know. I should know, Lynn, but like I'm having a little brain block right now. What's an adverb?
so an adverb describes an action. So she ran
Mhm.
quickly. Quickly is an
Ah,
adverb.
okay,
So
gotcha.
in my mind, you have an adverb because your verb is lazy. And so you can do a
Mm,
better verb and get rid of the adverbs. And so you could say she sprinted or she
okay.
galloped, and that's enough,
Mhm.
you know? And so this friend of mine, she's an amazing writer and we're in a critique group together. So when I say get rid of the adverbs, she's going to look at me and say, respectfully, I disagree. And she's going to ignore that because that's not her preference in writing, but she's still a
Yeah.
great writer. So I think when you get feedback, you have to determine what feedback resonates for you and your style and your goals, and feel confident enough to reject feedback that maybe doesn't. And that's okay.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I see it was Martin who said the same thing, who said, I'll be back again. Martin says, this podcast, this episode is so timely because I'm about to embark on writing a book. And I would imagine, Lynn, that Martin is not alone in this, that there are people that are going to be watching this now, or maybe the playback later, listening to the podcast in the future, who are listening because they're thinking about writing a book. And can you like take yourself back to that time before you wrote the first book? And if you were to give yourself advice on starting that process, what would you tell yourself and maybe help
So,
others?
yeah, in writing circles, there's this notion of plotters and pantsers. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Brenda, but um, pantsers write by the seat of their pants and plotters plan it out. And
Okay.
I was born a pantser. I'm telling you, I just like to sit down and go and see what happens. And that is really hard to do. And so with Woman of Valor, I would lose track of, well, what happened earlier and what was this one's name and did they have brown hair or blonde hair? And so I had to like just sort of take notes and go back through the chapters and figure things out so that I could write consistently. So I ended up teaching myself to be a plotter after Woman of Valor. And so my advice would be, if you're going to write a book, really learn
Mhm.
about how to plan it out. I use a tool called the beat sheet. The beat sheet is not mine. It's from a book called Save the Cat. But I've modified it for my purposes, and you can get one for fiction,
Okay.
you can get one for nonfiction. And I spent a month for the next novel, a whole month, plotting it out, writing character descriptions and profiles and that kind of thing before I started writing. So the best advice I can offer is to plan it out. And believe me, you will still have lots of room for creativity, but you'll be more confident writing it and you will get through faster and with fewer mistakes because you know where the story is going. So plot it out in
Yeah.
any way possible.
Okay. That's really good advice. Making a starting
Yeah.
process. All right. Martin also had a question. Let me see if this one's coming up on screen. Yes, I finally got one. Martin,
Yeah.
I was glad you put this on because like now they're starting to come through. At least here's one. What was the name
Yeah.
of the person in the UK? Elizabeth, was it Gowing?
Gowing.
Gowing?
Yep.
Okay.
Gowing. She actually lives in Kosovo, but she's from the UK. And so definitely check her out. Tell her that I referred you. She's an
Mhm.
amazing, inspiring person. So, yeah.
She, Minister of Kosovo's advisor on community affairs. Does that sound like the
Yes.
right person?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I tagged her in on the comments, Martin. So if you look through the comments, you'll see that I tagged her in on it. And I thought it probably was her because there's a great thing that happens inside LinkedIn. And let me just share this on screen as I'm talking about this right now. When you tag someone in, or when you're looking at their profile, you can see who common connections are. So when I saw her profile, I noticed that it was showing common connections. Let me make this a little bit larger so you all can see. But it said Lynne Golodner and Andrew Gudzinski. I'm like, oh, it has to be the right Elizabeth because I typed in Elizabeth Gowing Publishing, and then that came up for some reason. So it
Yeah.
brought me to the right person inside there.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right, let me just see if there's any other questions or comments that are coming in from here. I need to go back to my other screen for a second. And the fun part about this, Lynn, is when you're hosting, you're kind of piloting, co-piloting, navigating. You're serving as producer, director, all those things that are happening on here. Um, and I would imagine that there are going to be people who are going to watch this again because they came in halfway and they're going to be replaying it again. So I always like to cover the points. Okay, here's another question that came in from Rosalind. I can't pull it up on screen here, but Rosalind says, "What is the name of the app to plot it out?" And I didn't jot that up on screen, Lynn, but what was that again?
So I mentioned a tool called the Beat Sheet, and it comes
Okay.
from a book called Save the Cat. I
Okay.
haven't read Save the Cat. A lot of people have, but the Beat Sheet is a 15 beat outline to help you plot out your book. I have
Okay.
modified it for my students, and so I'm happy to send you mine if you want to email me or message me.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Did
it's a
did I
great tool.
spell that out right? Save the
You did.
Cat is the name of the book and the BEAT sheet?
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, and there's been so many great resources that you've mentioned. I did put a couple of them up on screen. You talked about Atticus, and I think I found the right one,
Yep.
atticus.io. Does that sound right, Lynn?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I want to start to round out our conversation here for today. And first of all, what I want to do is I want to pull up your LinkedIn profile up on screen. So let me go back to that right now. And while I'm pulling that up, Lynn, are you open to connecting with folks that are watching this, whether they're watching live or in the replay? Are you open to connecting with folks that invite you to connect?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just say that you saw me or heard me here and let's connect. And I'm on all the socials. So my LinkedIn is up on the screen now, but I'm on Facebook and Instagram and sometimes on Twitter. And
Mhm.
so, any way in which you want to follow me. I also have a weekly Substack about writing and publishing. It's called the Rebel Author Newsletter. And I would love it if you want to subscribe. So that would be awesome. I see
Okay.
a question from Lee Moss. Do you mind if I jump in and answer it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Lee asked what inspires me as an author. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lee. It's good to see you. I am inspired to answer questions that I don't have answers for. So I've
Mhm.
always written to make meaning and to figure out what I believe about things, and to explore something that I'm curious about or perplexed by. And so that's really what inspires me. I write to figure out what I think and what I believe, and also to notice. So I love to be out in nature. I could go on a hike in the woods, and I'm just sort of taking notes, and I end up writing a nature essay because it's so restorative and calming to me. And I'm like, well, why is that? And I like to explore it and sort of interrogate it in writing. So that's why I write.
Mhm. That's awesome. Thank you, Lee. Yeah, these comments are kind of getting a little wonky. I want to try to troubleshoot this a little bit more. And while I have your LinkedIn profile up on screen, two things I want to comment on. I'm somebody like myself. I specialize in LinkedIn, so when I see good things, I always like to point them out. Love the banner image that you have in the background, which is a collection and a little glimpse into your books, and then a really clear, statement: author, writing coach, and marketing entrepreneur. I love it. I think just that's so nicely done on there. For folks that are visiting your profile, I will let them know that you have turned on creator mode. And I know that because it says talks about in this list of hashtags. So for the average person visiting your profile who wants to connect with you, they'll get there and it'll say follow. I'll just let you know that if you want to connect with Lynn, you can, but you've got to click on the more button. And then underneath that, you'll get an option that will either say personalized invite or connect. And just tell her that you saw her on the interview with Brenda, and she'll remember
Yep.
where we saw each other from a recent thing there. All right. And then also, Lynn, I want to pull up your website up on screen, and give me just a second to pull this one on here. We're going to start with your main I think this is your main website, right?
Yeah.
lynnegolodner.com.
Yep. I
Okay.
say that's my writer
And
website. So yeah.
then
It's
as I'm
also
pulling that up on here, um, can you remind us, if someone's watching today and they're interested in working with you, what are the services and offerings that you have?
So if you look on the website in front of you, Write with Lynn is a button that is all of the different classes, retreats, workshops, coaching that I do. So you want to check that out. There's even free monthly write-alongs, one weekend a month that you can do on Zoom. You can get on that list. We're doing a virtual holiday reading on December 16th, which is really fun if you want to come and hear people read their work. It's amazing. So just message me and I can show you all that stuff. I do writing coaching. I do developmental edits and things like that. And then, of course, my books, my articles, any upcoming talks would be under events. So if you want
Mhm.
me to come and speak about my book or talk about publishing or writing, I'm happy to do it. I also want to mention, and it's actually even not here, but I have a podcast called the Make Meaning Podcast, and we focus mostly on authors and people in publishing. And Brenda has been on it and will be on it again. So
Yeah.
it's good to listen to people's journeys and how they published and why and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've done a little bit of like, we bring each other on each other's podcasts. I think there's some nice overlap in our audiences, but I think it's also it's complimentary. And you've been one of my return guests, and I've been one of your return guests as well. So yeah, Make Meaning is the name of the podcast. I'll make sure to tag that into the show notes below as well. And then you've also got, we were talking about this in the pre-show, but you also have a website called scotiaroadbooks.com. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's the publishing house website, and it really talks about, who we publish and how to do it. And you can even submit under submissions. You can submit a manuscript for consideration, and maybe we will publish your book. So that could be really cool.
Yeah, and again, that's just for it's just for fiction books, is right? Not nonfiction.
No, we publish historical fiction, literary fiction, contemporary fiction, and memoir and narrative nonfiction or essay collections. But it is all
Okay.
women, just so you know, it's for
Yeah.
women over 40. So sorry, guys, I would love to work with you. I could still work with you in other ways, but Scotia Road Books only publishes women's books.
That's good to know too. Thank you for summarizing that for us. And yeah, you're picking your niche and you're picking your category. You've chosen to support women. I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think you and I, even before we started working together, I think we met through, I don't know if it was through Inforum or one of the other organizations, but I know that we've both been involved with Inforum, which is a women's networking organization, and we've overlapped in there from time to time. So Lynne, this has been just such a delightful conversation. Before we wrap up today, I just want to give you the chance to offer any final comments on finding the best publishing path for your book.
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that it is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't rush yourself, really think it through. And also, there's really not a wrong decision. So, however you go and publish this time, you'll learn things and maybe you'll do it again, or maybe you'll take a different route next time. And it's about, your bigger career goals. Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah. Great points. And it sounds like because you have so much experience going through the book writing process and publishing process too, there's so many great insights here. So I really want to encourage our audience, if you're not already following and connected with Lynne on Lynne on LinkedIn, please do so. Look at the resources and events, and even, buy her book. I mean, this is such a great book. And I have to say, I we talked earlier about when you pick people to do proofreads and editing, there's your supporters. I've always been a supporter of Lynne, and I have several of her books in my bookshelf. But when she was publishing this, I was like, absolutely, I'm going to buy your book because I'm a supporter of you. But I was so I knew I was going to like it, but I liked it in a whole other way that I didn't expect, and that was like such a pleasant surprise. So highly recommend checking that out. I'll make sure to tag the link. Should we go to the website? Is that the best place to buy the book, or is that the only place, or can they find it on Amazon as well?
Well, you can buy it anywhere you buy books. So bookshop.org, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Powell's, anywhere. And frankly, when you buy it online, it helps. I mean, I make less money, but I get ranking, and that's really important too. So just buy the book, and I'll be happy. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell people the same thing. I like it. You can buy it direct from me from my website. You can buy it on Amazon. Some people just prefer Amazon because they've got gift cards and the convenience factor of it. So it all comes down. But it's a great piece of advice as well. If you are supporting a friend who is an author, ask them, where should I buy your book? And they will let you know, because you might earn a little bit more money if they buy it from you directly versus Amazon. Or in Lynne's case, you might say, well, I really need you to buy it on Amazon because I'm trying to get more verified ratings. So ask the author before you buy the book if you know them. I think it's a really great way of supporting. Would you agree with that, Lynne?
Absolutely. And I would also say, and this doesn't occur to a lot of people, but reviews mean a lot to authors. And that helps you in your ranking too. So if you like a book, then Amazon and Goodreads are places to do reviews.
Yeah.
And if
Mhm.
you don't like the book, which is totally valid, there's lots of books I don't like. I don't leave bad reviews. I don't think that there's any benefit to doing that. I've had one bad review, and it was that the reader said there was too much food in the book. I can live with that bad review, but like, why waste your time doing that? So if you like the book, leave a review, because that means a lot to writers and it helps them with their ranking too.
Yeah, it's funny because you said that. Like I once got a review on Amazon, and it was like 4 out of 5, and it was pretty early on with my book, and it was a really great review. And I reached out to the person and I said, "Why did you? I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but you did 4 out of 5 instead of 5 out of 5." And they said, "Oh, that was an error because there was nothing critical on it at all." And it was surprising. I'm like, "Why would they only give me 4?" I
Right.
started, but at any rate, Lynne, thank you so much. I'm going to give you a review, and I'm on Goodreads as well, so I'll do the review in multiple places. But I just want to thank you again for the time and for joining me here today.
Oh, Brenda, thanks so much. It's always really fun to talk with you. And thanks to the audience. This has been a really interactive morning, and I'm glad to hear from everybody.
Absolutely. And whether you're watching in live or in playback, as soon as you're done watching the video, could you do us a favor? You'll get a little share icon at the bottom. And if you could click on share and then just share this as a LinkedIn post, that'd be great. This is a really great technique for those of you who are struggling with content as well. So if you have not yet posted this week, this month, heck, maybe even this year, go ahead and push it out as a LinkedIn post. Maybe tell people something that you learned by watching this show, or tell people like who should watch this. Watch this video if you're looking at publishing and learning more about publishing options, or watch this video because my friend at Lynne Golodner appears. And if you use the @ sign and tag Lynne and or myself, we will comment back, and that helps to support the show as well. With that said, thank you everyone so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoy watching the video today, and we look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn. Take care and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.